The Millennium, a prophetic forecast by Johanna Brandt. Chapter 19. What shall we do to be saved? A full year has passed since I received my message for South Africa, but the time has not been wasted. Although I was not allowed to publish it at once, I lost no opportunity during the past year of preparing those with whom I came into contact for it. And I found the preparing of others the best possible preparation for myself. Questions were put to me that set me thinking, and I propose to answer a few of them here. Not only my friends and relatives have received the message. I brought it to a large public gathering at Strydpan on April 21st, 1917, and to a private meeting at Yeoville on May 14th, and again a few weeks later to a meeting of women at Newlands on the Rand. And what impressed me most powerfully in speaking of my glorious experience in public as well as in private was its eager acceptance by the women. Not a childish credulity, mark you, but the quick and ready response of the initiate. My story seems to strike the hidden chord of intuition, which in women is so much more finely developed than in men. And intuition, as I have said before, is that mysticism by which alone the marvels of the mystic life can be grasped. It was the realization that I would have to reach the understanding of my male readers by another channel, as well as the question which had been put to me repeatedly by men and women. So you do not believe that the age of miracles is past? That caused me to compile those facts in Christian history that form the first part of this book. History proves that the supernatural has been manifested to men in all the ages past. From a cloud of witnesses, I have selected only a few, and every reader who wishes to investigate the matter further can satisfy himself that there has never been a cessation of divine revelation. We admit that mysticism has been all but buried under the materialism of our day, and that what we call miracles has been few and far between during the last centuries. But there is undeniable proof all around us that the age of mysticism has been revived. We hear of cases of miraculous healing on every side, but we simply refuse to accept them. They are divinely inspired teachings spreading far and wide, if we could only bring ourselves to recognize them. They are the forerunners of the coming Christ in an age of skepticism, the great pioneers of the age of divine knowledge. The skepticism is not wholly without justification, for side by side with the spread of mysticism, there is the increase of black magic to confuse and bewilder the seeker after truth. It is a time of extreme danger, in which men would do well to exert to the utmost their powers of discrimination. Pure motives, righteous living, these are our only safeguards in this time of extreme danger. The tests by which men may know where they stand in this final struggle between light and darkness. The development of those powers which open up the glorious world of mysticism may bring us into direct contact with the world of darkness. It is a natural and inevitable law, and should put us on our guard in time. Here again, single-mindedness is our only salvation. Single-mindedness and fearlessness. Fear should not be the driving power which brings you to the path of truth, but do not confuse craven-heartedness with the holy fear, the reverent awe that marks the true disciple. I touch upon the subject of fear because it is so justifiable where the unknown, the mysterious is concerned. And indeed, one can hardly call the prudence fear, which restrains the bravest and most thoughtful men from casting themselves on a stream whose destination is unknown to them. The second question, which has been put to me over and over again, was by no means prompted by skepticism, and that was whether what happened to me on the 7th of December 1916 in Pretoria was not one of those common trance experiences of which we hear and read so much in the spiritualistic circles. To this, I answer most emphatically no. In describing those events, I have done my best to give a true impression of the transcendental consciousness, the marvelous keenness of mental perception, which marked my condition from beginning to end. This was so acute that it enabled me to read the thoughts of those who entered my room, and to answer questions before they could be put to me, and to know the time of day, to the second, without either clock or watch in my room. I knew at the last, when this consciousness was forsaking me, if one may so express it, I was fully conscious of sinking into unconsciousness, and I was neither surprised nor alarmed, for I still thought that it was death. I have no personal experience of spiritistic phenomena. I have never attended a spiritistic séance in my life, though I admit that it has often been a temptation to me to do so. There is a sentence in the formula of the communion service of the Dutch Reformed Church, of which I am a member, which forbids the tailing up of the spirits of the departed, and I have always observed it in its literal sense. I am convinced that communion with the dead is possible, but I have been taught to regard it as a sinful and dangerous practice. And beyond reading some of the best works on spiritualism, I have carefully refrained from taking part in the widespread spiritistic movement of our time. The calling up of spirits to gain information of the unseen world, spirit rappings, and the turning of tables has always scorned to me childish and unsatisfactory in the extreme. At the same time, I could not fail to recognize that I had mediumistic powers of an unusual kind, and these I have on principle suppressed systematically. About 15 years ago, a curious effort was made to use my right hand to transmit messages from the unseen to this world. Every time I took up my pen to write anything, an electric shock would galvanize my right arm, causing me to grip my pen and involuntarily to write messages altogether foreign to my own thoughts. At times my pen would trace strange and beautiful patterns. I regarded this as a temptation of the evil one, and set myself resolutely to overcome it, with the result that the mysterious phenomenon disappeared entirely. And it is quite 10 or 12 years since I last noticed anything of the sort. I was therefore wholly unprepared for the events of December 7th. My relatives and friends know that the year 1916 had seen me engaged in a sordid and disappointing struggle against injustice and persecution, in which I had sacrificed everything I held dear, and had failed utterly to save the idea for which I had laboured, and the knowledge that this failure, this complete destruction of a cherished ideal for the future of South Africa, had been the last drop of suffering in my mother's cup, had brought me to a despairing frame of mind, little calculated to prepare me for the ordeal of her death. It was then that the messenger appeared to me for the first time, and anything more unexpected, more amazing, more foreign to my own reflections than his hopeful and illuminating revelations, it would be difficult to imagine. I have been asked why I am not able to publish those 45 pages of inspired writings fully and in their original text, and to this my answer is that there would have been no objection to their publication if I had actually passed away that day. As it is, they are too personal, and dealing largely as they do with the political conflict in which I had been engaged. It would be impossible to publish them at this moment without inflaming one or more of the political parties of South Africa. At some future time, they may see the light of day. Another question, which may interest my readers, is whether I have ever doubted the divine origin of the revelations made to me. I have been weighed down by a sense of responsibility, but I have never wavered, never doubted. Even if many of the more personal revelations had not been fulfilled lately, nothing could shake my faith in them. No power on earth can rob me of the conviction that South Africa is on the brink of unspeakable developments. Nothing can shake my belief that the whole world is threatened with altogether inconceivable calamities and tribulations, and that the second advent is at hand. On much that was revealed to me, the divine "See that thou tell no man" was pronounced, and when the time comes to make them known, their testimony will outweigh every other. The last question, and the most important at the present time, is this: what are you going to do? How do you propose to mitigate the coming disasters? What shall we do to be saved? Oh, reader, the question is not what I am going to do, but what are you going to do now? The road I am to travel stretches before me, clear as day. No one could pass through an experience like mine and remain in any doubt or uncertainty as to his or her future duty. But what are you going to do, every man and woman in South Africa, into whose hands this book may fall? Ask yourself this question: what part are you going to play in the tragedies to be enacted in this country in the near future? Remember that it is not my voice that asks these questions. The message of this book is not my message to you, and it is no coincidence, no accident, which causes this book to fall into your hands at this critical moment in the history of South Africa. These revelations have a meaning for you. Otherwise, they would not have reached you at all. There is no such thing as chance. In the divinely ordered scheme of the universe, there is nothing small, nothing unimportant, nothing out of place. That this book should have reached you now is an event of significant importance to South Africa, which you would do well to realize. No one can answer these questions for you. You must answer them yourself. Take one or two of the problems of South Africa. Take the problem fraught with so many dangers and complications for our future. Take the native question. What has the native learnt from you? What has been the influence which he has imbibed in your home? Has the moral Kafir learnt immorality from you? Have you taught him how his natural passions can be inflamed and maddened by strong drink? Has he always received justice and fair treatment at your hands? Or have all his forces been drained in your service? Or have you, perhaps, pampered him, spoiled nature's unspoiled product by placing it in an unhealthy, unsuitable environment? Have you ever tried to drag him to the unnatural level of your own degraded life? Or have you, as elder brother, felt the responsibility of the trust imposed on you by setting him an example of clean and decent living? There are many other questions, but let us take one of paramount importance to South Africa: the political question. There are 4 political parties in South Africa, and you are probably a member of one of them. You have chosen to join the ranks of one of them. It does not matter which. And it does not matter what your motives were in the choice you made, for you are prompted by your motives, not by mine. And let us take it then that it is good and right to have different political parties in a country. What then? The four parties, South African, Unionist, Nationalist, and Labour, are impersonal affairs, all claiming to possess those principles best calculated to promote the social, national, and political interests of South Africa? By what means have you upheld those principles? Have you employed strategy and cunning? Have you used violence? Have you spent your time in building up the interests of your party, or in breaking down those of your opponent? Has he been systematically blackened and vilified by you? Or have you been engaged in scrutinizing the purity of your own motives and actions? Have you sown seeds of suspicion, hatred, and distrust against your political opponent? Have you nourished feelings of revenge? Are you plotting violence? See, these questions each one must answer for himself, and on the answers which each individual gives, the future of South Africa depends. At the risk of creating a disturbance, I feel myself impelled to sound the note of warning on one particular point, and it is this. If there are any criminals in our country plotting a renewal of the riots of 1915, let them beware, for just that spark is needed to set South Africa ablaze from end to end. We may not be directly responsible for some of the cleansing fires which are coming over South Africa, and these will not be averted by any exertion on our part, but there are others, and the one alluded to above is the most important, that will maybe be brought about entirely through our agency. For these, we are to be held responsible, and we are called upon to strain every nerve in a supreme, a united effort to mitigate their evil consequences. If we cannot get sufficient cooperation to avert them altogether,